Renegade Upcycled Goods. The most complicated of these 5 upcycling projects is making a gift box. This project requires 2 greeting cards that look good together, or more greeting cards, probably about the same shape and size. You'll need a pencil, a ruler, scissors, glue, tape, and it might be helpful to have something like a toothpick, skewer, or in my case I'm using a metal nail file that has a smooth kind of pointy edge, or maybe even a bent paper clip would be good. So this card that has a 3-dimensional design on the top is going to be my lid, and the other card is going to be, oh, there's a loose thread on there. Put that thread from the ribbon. The other card is going to be the bottom of the box. I'm going to start with the lid. So I've already marked my fold lines on here. There are these corner designs that I wanted to not have cut part way off onto the top of the lid and on the side of the lid. So I decided to go in really far, like I did a full inch, measured in 1 inch. So I measured in 1 inch from this edge on each end, and then lined it up and drew a line. And I did that on all 4 sides. And you can use an X-Acto knife if you want, or I'm going to just use scissors. Now, this is the short side, which has less space for the flaps to fold over into. So I'm going to have the flaps, the corner flaps, fold to the long side. So that's where I'm going to snip it, is from the long side, on the long side from the edge of the cardstock to where these 2 lines cross. And I'll do that on both sides. 1 slit for each corner. Then you're going to need to fold the card. It would be helpful to put your marks on the back of the card, but because this has a 3-dimensional aspect, it won't lay flat. So I marked on the right side of the card. You want to fold on all these lines, including on these corner flaps. So fold. Let's see if I can get this to fold nicely. Fold it right along that line that you draw. 1. And because I used a nice sharp mechanical pencil on this, it kind of embossed the edge, so it wants, if you're careful, it wants to fold right where that mark is. And then do that on the other 2 sides. You can fold these corner flaps to the inside and glue them there, and then all your lines will line up on your corner. Or you can fold it to the outside, and then you'll have this sort of decorative thing. I had originally thought I was going to fold them to the outside, but I really like that nice smooth edge like that, so I think I'm going to fold them to the inside. And so I want to maybe press them out just a little bit so they're not tucked so tightly in away from the flaps they're supposed to attach to. Now I'm going to put glue on here and glue it in place and then hold it with some tape. I'm going to get some tape ready. I don't have any just plain, clear tape for taping like gift bags and stuff. So, but I've got this packaging tape, so I'll use that. Just get 4 pieces ready. And I'm just taping them to the edge of the table, letting them hang off. And then I get my regular white glue that dries clear and put a little glue on the flap. Just going to kind of spread it around a little bit. Thin layer, you don't want it too gloppy. You don't want a bunch of glue sticking out. And I'll do the other side at the same time. And then turn that in and press it together. Squeeze it together. Definitely need tape. It wants to open back up. So I'm going to hold it in place. And put a little piece of tape to hold it while the glue's drying. Some glue squirting out off my fingers. Get another piece of tape. The other side. Oopsies, it's already drying in place. In the wrong place. That's kind of fast for white glue. Okay. So I'm going to press that together. Still going to add some tape. Hold it down. Okay, and then I'll repeat that on the other side. And that's the box lid. Now we need to make the box bottom that the lid goes on and take some careful measurements to make sure that the lid will fit on top of the box. And I happen to have this card that's not exactly the same color blue, but it looks pretty good together. And I'm going to use this. Now I need the bottom of this box to be just a touch smaller than the lid, or to be the outside measurement of the box bottom to be just a hair smaller than the inside of the lid, so the lid can slide on and off easily. We need to do some careful measurements to make sure that the box fits inside of the lid here. And my width inside the lid is 3 and about 6/16. And we want to take away a 16th to account for the thickness of the cardstock from the greeting card. We want to make the box a little smaller so it slides on. So that'll be 3 5/16 inch wide for the box bottom. And for the top, it's 5 7/8 inches, or 5 and about 1/16 in from the end. So 5 15/16. We want to take away about a 16th. So that will be 5 7/8 inches long. So basically, we want to make our box be 1/16 inch around all the way, you know, this way and this way, 1/16 of an inch smaller than the lid. So our box is going to be 3 5/16 inches wide and it's going to be 5 7/8 inches long. And then it's going to have these flaps all the way around, just like the lid did. Now the lid has 1-inch flaps. So the box needs to have at least something a little bit bigger than 1 inch. So when I measured the card, I already did that. The card is 8 1/4 inches long by 5 3/8 inches wide. So we need to find the difference between the size we need and the size available to us. And so the difference between 3 5/16 inches wide, we've got 5 3/8 inch wide card, and this is in eighths and this is in 16ths. So I want to change this to 16ths. That's 5, and 8 goes into 16 twice. So 3 times 2 is 6 16ths. So 5 3/8 is the same as 5 6/16 inches minus 3 5/16 to find the difference. So you can't see that very well. And find the difference. 6/16 minus 5/16 is 1/16, and 5 inches minus 3 inches is 2 inches. So that's the difference. And like I said, we need at least 1 inch on either side, and this is more than 2 inches to divide, half of it on this side, half of it on this side. So that's going to be just big enough. And we need to find the difference on the length. The length of the card is 8 1/4. Now this is in quarters and this is in eighths. So I want to turn it all into eighths. 4 goes into 8 twice. So 1 times 2 is 2. And that's 2/8. So it's 8 1/4 is the same as 8 2/8 minus 5 7/8. So this is 2, which is smaller than 7. So I need to borrow 1. So 1 is 8/8. So 8/8 plus 2/8 is 10/8. 10/8 minus 7/8 is 3/8. And 7 inches minus 5 inches is 2 inches. So the difference, the total difference between the size that we need to fold the box up to and the size of the card is 2 3/8. And that is also more than 1 inch. So that's good. Now 2 3/8 is bigger than 2 1/16. So we're going to base our card box sides on the smaller of the two measurements. And we'll have to trim off the extra that's on these sides, because we want all these flaps to fold up the same amount. And we want half of it on one side and half of it on the other. So the smaller of the two measurements, the 2 1/16, if we divide that in half, my marker is running out. Let me get a different marker here. 2 1/16 divided by 2 is 1 1/32 of an inch. So that's how wide this flap is going to be. The difference of 2 1/16 inch on the width, half of it's going to be here. This right here is going to be 1 1/32, and here is going to be 1 1/33. 32nd of an inch, okay? And we need that, that's going to fold up and be like this edge. And we need that edge to stick up the same amount all the way around. So we need the 1 1/32 of an inch here too. So this is going to be 1 1/32 of an inch. And so is this 1 1/32 of an inch. Now the problem is that the card is 8 1/4, and we want to make it 5 7/8, and we determine the difference is 2 3/8, which is more than 2 1/16. So we're going to be turning up 1 1/32 here and 1 1/32 here, which totals the 2 1/16. So when we take away that 2 1/16, we're going to have to change this to 16ths. So this difference, that's the total of this side and this side, here and here, totals 2 3/8. And we're going to subtract 16ths. So let's change 8ths to 16ths. That's a 2 6/16. And we're going to be making 2 flaps totaling 2 1/16. These are inches. 6/16 minus 1/16 is 5/16. And 2 minus 2 is 0. So we're going to have an extra 5/16 left over on this edge that we need to trim off. We can measure in the 5/16 and mark that line, and then measure in the 1 1/32 and mark that line. Or we can measure one side, the 1 1/32, and then measure 5 7/8 and mark that, and then measure the 1 1/32. It doesn't matter either way, so that you end up with the extra trimmed off and all your lines marked to make a 1 1/32 inch wide flap all the way around on all 4 sides, and the inside space is going to be 3 5/16 by 5 7/8 of an inch. I'm going to use mark on the back of the card 1 1/2. So I'm going to mark it, and I'll do it on the other side. 1 1/2 of an inch, and then I'll do that on the other end of the card. So I line up those 2 marks and draw a line. And I do that on the other side. Yeah, this is the end that I want to keep the whole thing. So that's going to be 1 1/2 of an inch on either end of that. 1 1/2 of an inch. And I'm going to mark that line. I'm lining up the 2 marks with the ruler. So we'll say 1 2 3 4 5 and 7/8. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. And then we need the flap to be 1 1/32. So 1 and then 1/2 right there. And then that should leave us 5/16 that we need to trim. 1 2 3 4 1/2. So it's pretty close. So we need this 5 7/8 inches long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7/8. And then this is 1 inch and 1/2 of a 16th right there. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4.5 16ths left. Line them up. That's going to be a cutting line or a trim line. And this is going to be my fold line. So this part I'm going to trim off because I want less of that part. That can go in the recycle bin. And I also need to fold the flaps. Now, because I have the lid flaps folded to the inside, there's that little bit of extra that can catch. And I don't want that extra thickness on the box to line up with the extra thickness on the lid. So I cut on the lid, I cut on the long sides. So on the box, I'm going to cut on the short sides to make the flaps. Now, this is where the scribing or embossing tool might come in handy. Because I used the sharpened pencil, it did help on the lid, but you might consider taking something and kind of embossing the inside of your card. You could do it by just pressing really hard with your pen or pencil that you use to mark it. Or you can go back with some sort of smooth, skinny little tool to emboss the edges and make them fold in a little bit more nicely. I didn't do this to the lid because of the decoration, the three-dimensional decoration. So that should help us fold. Wow, that folded really easily. It just wants to go right on that embossed line. Piece of tape. It's a little bit long. It's going to interfere with the other side, the other flap. And put a little bit of glue on there, not very much. Don't like it squishing out. You can use that piece of tape as a handle. Then press that together. So the glue is coming out. Okay. And then you need to let them dry before you put the lid on. So you can see this is just a 1/16 of an inch higher on the box than it is on the lid. So you pretty much can't see the other box, it's just on the bottom. I hope I'm in frame here. So normally you might want to have a little bit narrower lid or a really big card for your bottom box. And I need to let those dry now.